তোমার এই যোগপুরের কাজের চেয়ে অনেক অনেক সহজ। যেদিন তুমি আমাকে তোমার ভান্ডারে ঢুকতে দিয়েছিলে, তোমার এই সোনার চাল দেখে
এইবার উন্মুক্ত তীরের তরবারি। কি হচ্ছে ক্যাপ্টেন বাবু? কি করছেন? কি করছি দেখবেন? আমি জুয়েল লড়বো।
পিণ্ড পাথর, লোহা, সোনা, সেইখানে রয়েছে জোরের মূর্তি, আর ওপরের তলায় একটুখানি কাঁচা মাটিতে ঘাস উঠছে, ফুল ফুটছে, সেইখানে রয়েছে জাদুর খেলা। দুর্গমের থেকে আমি হিরে আনি, মানিক আনি, কিন্তু সহজের থেকে ওই প্রাণের জাদু
গ্রীসের একটি রাজ্য থেবাই। এই থেবাইয়ের রাজা লাইয়ুস দূর বিদেশ যাত্রাকালে নিহত হন। কিভাবে নিহত হন?
পুত্র হাতির বাহাইয়া রসে মুখোশ আই লড়ে রত স্বর্ণচূড় বিধায় পুরিয়া পুরি সাজিছে রাবণ রাজা বীর মাদে মাদি
কারারই লৌহ কপাট ভেঙে ফেলে করে লোপাট, রক্ত জমাট শিকল পূজার পাষাণ বেদি। সূর্য এই গানটা গাইছে।
I am to talk to you on a very broad subject, theatre of yesterday, today and tomorrow. It's really very broad. You can talk a lot about things, anything and everything on theatre. After hours of talking, he did not say anything specific also. It's a very diffused kind of a question to answer. That's why I asked Samavida Ghosh to tell me precisely what is the area which I am to focus on, and she sent me 4 questions in my messenger. The first question is that the theatre in its evolution is trying a lot to increase the efficiency of communication, renovating itself and trying new kinds of forms and techniques and technologies, but still there is a decline in the number of audience. Why so? That's the first question. And the second one is about the economics of theatre. She said the theatre cannot sustain by itself unless you get a grant or support from the government body or somebody. You may not be in a position to continue the theatre, especially for a full-timer. So, is it that theatre cannot be self-sufficient, or how can we make theatre self-reliant? That's the second question. And the third question is a little more basic. It's about the various forms of theatre being practiced and discovered, etc. And it's about the part of evolution of the present day theatre and how do I see it. That's more about the aesthetics, process, mode and the very basics of theatre itself. And the fourth question is connected with, and where does this theatre journey is going to? How does the future theatre look like? So these are the 4 questions which I'll try to answer in my short speech. Actually, during these times, it's this web talks which becomes the current trend, and it's not equivalent to talking to you, seeing your face, getting a response, silently immersing in a kind of conversation between us, the performer and the audience, the speaker and the persons who hear, to get something back than giving a one-sided soliloquy. It makes a little the situation a little uncomfortable, but I'll try to do it. I would have loved to do it more interactive, but this is what we can do now. So that it will be like this only. So I think I'll start answering the third question first, and then the fourth, then go back to the first and second. The question is about the evolution of theatre and its journey in time. It makes me to ask this basic question. Yes, we have a very long history. The history of theatre starts with the history of mankind, I believe. Even before the spoken language evolved, performance language happened. Those primitive or ancient men who went for the hunt, got a wild boar or killed a very dangerous tiger and came back to their settlement and told the women and children, other people there, how do they did it. Language is not in practice, so they performed how they did it, how they attacked the animal, what did I do, what did the animal do, and how I used my intelligence, how I improvised the situation and managed to win over. He may be giving an actual amount, an idea about the actual incident that happened, but of course he is adding his own masala. He will be adding his own imagination also to put it, to make it more appealing and interesting, and he wants his position to be slightly elevated by telling the story. So the storytelling, or making it more precise, the story performing, that's the basic essence of theatre. Then everybody can read how the ancient performance cultures, like the Indian tradition of performance, the Greek tradition of performance, the Mayan tradition of performance, so how it developed, how the form was formulated, how Natya Shastra codifies the whole Sanskrit aesthetics, mode, practice and performance, how poetics of Aristotle gives the basic idea of what theatre should be and what it should be, and how does it operate, how does it affect the audience. It's written to centuries and centuries. The Roman theatre, the British theatre, the European theatre, and for the last 150 years maybe the Indian theatre. The Indian theatre means it's the Western model of the Indian theatre. Think of the Natya Shastra and the classic theatre, and even older folk forms of theatre which we have in this country. Okay, these forms have been there, and in the history of theatre, say in Greek theatre, they addressed thousands of people at a time. The theatre of Epidaurus had a capacity of 20,000 people watching, seeing the play at a time. It was done on a broad daylight. Of course, there is no sound system, no mic system, no amplification, but the theatre invented its own form to communicate. The huge mask which tells you he is the hero, he is a bad character, he is a good character, he is a female character, he is a comedian, all those things. And the mask had this kind of sound directing areas, and the chorus who can say or sing the line, say 20 people, 30 people, 50 people singing it loud at the same time in the same tune, so that's more audible. And of course, since the stories are from epics, they have an idea of what will be the basic storyline that's happening on stage. And the amphitheatre has been constructed facing a hill, the audience sitting on the slant of a hill, so that everybody can see what's happening on the stage, a balcony kind of thing. And the sound, whatever is there, will be contained there. So, from that day onwards, the engineering of theatre happened. If you look into the Natya Shastra, we are not addressing thousands of people at a time. The maximum number of people that a theatre prescribed in Natya Shastra can hold is 500 or maximum 550. So it's only for 550 people in the biggest model of the classical Indian Natya Shastra based theatre. In the smaller ones it's 200 to 250. So we are addressing only that much amount of people. And time changed. We had more actors coming on stage. The narrative technique changed. The way you tell the story changed. And the way you enact changed. And then came the big invention, the electricity and the bulb. So lighting started. It's a big change. It's a drastic change. And even when you can light up a whole stage, that's one thing. But the last, say, 100 years, the lights developed into different kinds of lights, like spotlights. And I remember Girish Karnad saying that seeing the application of the spotlight in a theatre made a very drastic change in his playwriting technique. So if there are 10 actors on the stage, I could show the face of only one person. I can focus on to him, keeping the others in a dimmer light. That means I have the space to go into the psyche of this one person, his emotion, his reaction, and if needed I can open the light to everybody and the responses. So the narrative technique from simply narrating the whole story has become kind of more flexible, that you can focus on one character, his emotion, and then develop it, and then come back and go to the next person. And it's, let's say, a radical invention that happened in theatre which changed the narrative. Naturally, at the same time, theatre becomes more realistic. The stylized performance was needed before because of this nature of the storytelling. You cannot pinpoint to the psychology of one character, even if the Greek theatre did it with words, with the poetry. So before that, theatre was depending on more on poetry, the arrangement of the words and the performance language, the stylized performances, the other tools like usage of properties and other things. Or on the contrary, When you're speaking about the classical Indian theatre, it's about the subtlety of the emotion, the movement of the eyebrow, the movement of one thing, the mudra, which is a symbolic language, a parallel language with which you can communicate. So, theatre has developed many techniques, many technologies, starting from the basic human body, the system of the mudra, which speaks, which communicates a particular meaning. You have this mudra here, it's one meaning. If you do the same thing at different posture, different position of the body, it's another meaning. So, theatre invented many kinds of narrative tools and techniques. Then, the design element comes in. The proscenium theatre comes in. The proscenium doesn't have a long history. It's only 300 to 400 years. It started from the Victorian period, and we got it with the British in Calcutta, on Bombay. We had this box theatre or building inside, and the fourth wall, and the proscenium came into realism, the set, the lights. Theatre becomes quite easy to do. It's more comfortable, it's more safe inside a proscenium. There's a basic grammar that has evolved for this proscenium theatre. Of course, Stanislavski taught us how to work on the actor and the character so that it becomes more realistic, more believable, more connected with the truth, so that the people can be more affected. Its communication becomes much more easier. And now we are breaking the fourth wall. Theatre becomes more inclusive. The fourth wall is destroyed. We want a direct connection between the audience. The distinction between the actor space and the audience space got diffused. We went back to the folk tradition of Jatra or many other forms existing in the different parts of India, not just in India, anywhere in the world. So new concepts regarding performance spaces and design evolved. We started thinking about environmental theatre. Badar Sarkar started performing in Curzon Park. It's another kind of communication. Plays started to take place on roadside, the whole street, in a garden, in a monumental building. Al-Kasi chose the Purana Killa of Delhi as the backdrop, as a scenario, as a set to do Antayuk and Tughlaq in the 60s. So theatre broke out of the hall. It started devising new modes of communication between the actor and the audience. Later, we have the post-dramatic performances. We started using visuals, computer graphics, computer-generated graphics, projections, multiple projections at the same time. We are seeing the live action alongside the projection. So it's digital images and the real actors communicating to us. So theatre is trying to expand its language, the modes of communication. I agree. But again, going back to the essence of theatre, you think about the first caveman performance which I told you in the beginning, to the very postmodern performance with all the gadgets. Take the technology out of it. Take the technology, the lights, the techniques. So what basically is happening there? Basically, it's storytelling. We are telling a story, we are narrating a story, we are performing a story, we are enacting a story, or we are living a story. Each word has its different meanings, but basically it is the telling of the story. It's maybe the telling of somebody else's story or my own story. Impersonal as the character. It's not just me, it's the character. If I'm telling you my own life story, even then it's not just me, it's the character of me. I'm just making a bit more larger, like the caveman did. So it's beyond the persona. It's basically to communicate this. So to do that, I use verbal language, I speak language. Hindi, Bengali, Malayalam, Chinese, English, whatever is it. I use sounds. If I am to perform, if my group Logathermi comes and performs in Kolkata, we are performing in Malayalam. Therefore, the language is just a sound, but the sound can communicate. Nowadays, recently after Grotowski and Peter Brook, they say theatre communicates not from the meaning of the word from the dictionary. It communicates by the sonority, the quality of the sound. The way you produce the sound makes some meaning in you. The universal sound which can cut across the use of the specificities of the language, the meaning, the words, the lexicon, and communicate to any other human being. So the sound, how the sounds, I use gibberish, meaningless sounds, nonsense sounds become senseful sounds in theatre. I use movement, I use gestures, I improvise, I create on the spot, I improvise, I elaborate the story, I narrate, I enact, I identify, I personify, I pretend, I perform, he or so and so, I dance and what not. And along with that, the technology and other embellishments, it's there. Yes. So basically, it is to tell the story. It remains the same. And that's the basic essence of theatre. Only the technology and the mode and the language we use changes. And it has to renovate itself. It has to adjust with the knowledge of the time. It has to adjust with the life reality. It has to work with the resources that is available. So it's that. The next question is, what makes me to do theatre? What made the caveman do theatre? The urge is the same. I want to communicate myself. I want to show you myself. What am I and how I did it? How I understand the life? How I manipulate my life? How I negotiate with things? And how dangerous the life around is? And how painful the life is? And how joyful to live with? See, it's about an amount of creative instinct inside me to narrate the story, to relate with the other living human being, which is a living instinct. As long as we live on, we have this instinct to communicate with another living entity. That's why I'm talking to you. I want to communicate. I want you to get back. I want to engage in a kind of creative dialogue with the other. So that's, and to show the world that this is my experience of life. This is my position of my life. This is how I think the world should go on. And in that process, slowly theatre is shifting from the personal need to the collective need. When I was a caveman, it was just to showcase myself and make myself big in front of you. But when I started to talk about the society, the life around, I started to speak for the voiceless. Theatre becomes the voice of the voiceless. Theatre started questioning the existing power structure. Theatre started to rebel and said this is not right. Theatre started dreaming a change in the social structure. And this happened not just today. It happened again from the age old. Think of Bhasa. Think of Euripides. What did I do? They started dreaming of other options, changes. For example, when Bhasa writes Pancharatra, where Duryodhana agrees to give the Pandavas their share of land. He doesn't say no to Krishna. He said yes, I'll give their land. They can happily live there. So that's an option. That should have been an option. Means there is no war in Kurukshetra. If there is no war, there is no Bhagavad Gita. See, there was a chance to end the story of Mahabharata like this. If Duryodhana said, yes, it's done, it's another story. And that was the dream of Bhasa. So it's actually a rebellion against the existing meta-narrative of Mahabharata. And what Euripides did? He gave voices for the women who are considered almost equal to the slaves or the animals or the refugees. The great democracy of Greek is limited only to the Greek men. The people coming from outside the country, means outside Athens, Athena, the slaves who did all the labor, women and the animals didn't have any right in that democracy, in that society. And Euripides gave voice for media. Lysistrata are the very interesting play where the only profession of these men is to fight and go into war. And if women decides to unite together across borders, the women of the two fighting countries comes together under Lysistrata and decides there won't be any sex with the husbands, with the men, if they say no to war, if they are not saying we are not going to the war. So if the war is stopped, then only they can have their relationships, and it succeeds. So it's a female protest against the nonsense of war which the male community has to surrender. See, these kinds of rebellious thoughts of dreaming changes, questioning existing power structures, theatre started doing it. And if you look into the history of theatre, then we see what remains now as the remainings of theatre, be it Ibsen, be it even Shakespeare, because these plays has raised questions directly and indirectly and expressed the complication of power, ruling, personal life, relations, etc. So they started dreaming. So basically theatre became a kind of socio-political activity. It was more accepted as a cultural activity. So the cultural activity of theatre became a socio-political activity. And of course, there was resistance from the existing power structure. Euripides was not that much accepted at that time. We don't know about Bhasa. How was he accepted? They had to fight the existing system and to force their presence, break the dynamics. And the existing system devised its own modes, its own tactics to contain this oasis within itself, at least to contain them, even if they cannot stop it. And that's where aesthetics developed. Natyashastra did the same thing as poetics. So that this is the norm of a good play. The theatre has to be like this. It has to be performed like this. And if you are looking into Natyashastra, we can see that in the first chapter itself, the story of the first performance as it happened. It was about the Mathana of Padali, means the milk and sea, and how the Rakshasas have been ridiculed, cheated, and they made oaths. They protested. They did just two things. They just froze the actions and made the actors numb. They didn't throw stones, they didn't shout, they didn't make any sound, they didn't attack the theatre. They just did two things, two basic things. One, they made the movement frozen. The actors couldn't move, and they made the words out of it. So no words, no movement, no theatre. So the play stopped there. It couldn't get completed. And what did they do? Then they constructed the theatre. Then they have the Jarjara to see that no unwanted, unnecessary, uncultured people are getting inside the theatre. And there are goats to give the surveillance at each of the door, each directions. So the theatre was contained in a theatre. 500 people, 600 people who will not make any trouble for the performance. So its theatre is protected within the theatre building, and that's the function of Natyagraha. So that there is no rebellious sound from the audience or the performer happening inside. So the theatre will be sticking to the existing power relations. The same thing poetics is also doing. Aristotle said the theatre should be like this only. And if you are looking closely, it's Sophocles, it's the King Oedipus. That's the best play. And Euripides doesn't fall into that character, that nature, that quality of theatre. So what is good theatre? What is theatre that can be accepted by the society, rewarded by the society, is decided by the aesthetics. So the good and bad theatre that keeps the social structure intact, and theatre which questions, but the questioning continued in different forms. Resistance cannot be stopped, and that's the history of human society, the evolution of the social order. So this is a place where I have to think about the journey of theatre in the past. Basically, it's 2 or 3 things: telling the story to the others, the creative urge, and also the theatre to question, rebel a socio-cultural, political activity. But theatre developed in a very multifaceted way. When the British people came in India, coming back to the Indian context, we got a new form of theatre as the proscenium theatre. How to make theatre believable, etc. And then slowly, in India, with the Sangeet Natak tradition, theatre as an industry started. Theatre becomes a kind of money-making machinery. You go and perform, you sell tickets, you get the box office, and the producer gets a profit out of it. And there are actors and technicians who could make a living out of it. Theatre becomes a profession. It happened everywhere in the world. So a kind of new theatre, which is the professional theatre or the theatre industry, evolved. So we can have 2 or 3 or many major divisions. This theatre industry, which can attract people, get money, make a profit, and make a living as a profession. That may be connoted in the first question, as a full-time artist, a full-time theatre. And there is a question of experimental theatre, trying to renovate the form of theatre, how to find out the new forms of theatre, new ways of doing theatre. The experimental or the parallel theatre, which is not a money-making, profitable activity. You can be a full-timer there, but you may not get enough money to live according to your fancies. You have to always struggle, go into poverty, fight. It's all burden, but many people are after that because it gives you another kind of pain and another kind of pleasure out of it. You find something meaningful. You find your life meaningful. You get a kind of ecstasy out of it. You're intoxicated with it. So that kind of parallel theatre is the second thing. And then there's a theatre of resistance, highly politically motivated theatre. In India, it might have been evolved with IPTA, the fight against the British, and the place that wanted Renaissance to happen faster, the place against injustice to women. It's about dowry system, it's about caste system, it's about anything. The names are there from Neeladarpan to a number of plays, revealing people this is a situation we are having, this is a reality which we are living in, and these are the entities we have to face, we have to fight, we have to confront, and these are the possibilities ahead. Come on, join us. We'll change the system, we'll change the society, we'll change our lives, our physical lives. So that is also there. So these theatres, these 3 different theatres do not have the same problem. They work in different perspectives. They work with different aesthetics. They work with different resources. They work with different functions. We cannot put the problem of the theatre industry on and find out, okay, it is here valid in this parallel theatre. We cannot put it on the political theatre. It's different. So the concerns are different, the modes are different, the realities are different. So that's how I see the evolution of theatre. And at the same time, I'm not pinpointing what are the specific faculties, specific language each theatre has taken. Yes, we have explored a lot. We have found out, I said, lights, the proscenium, the multimedia, the dancing into it, training the actors, increasing the craft of that. Yes, the folk traditions of narrating, singing, dancing, music, rhythm, use of mask and other indigenous things, re-invoking ritualistic aspects in the performance. We enlarged our language, our faculties, our craft. Schooling started. How to increase, how to enhance our craft of acting. Different schools, from Natyashastra tradition to the Sanskritic method, to the theatre of Brecht, Grotowski, Arthur, Barba, Philip Zaridi, to many people. So we are enriching ourselves, renewing ourselves, refreshing. Sometimes in the act of going forward, we find that we have to go back and take something from the history and renew it and refresh it. That's how this mask comes back. That's how the chorus comes back. That's how the group theatre comes back. Means the ensemble acting comes back. So we go back, take resources, look into history, and look into the technology, look into the resources around what is available, what is in our hand, and we expand it. And in that thing, I would like to say that even if we are using all these things like Jatra or Pandavani to Nacha, as Habibji did in his wonderful productions, new narrative styles, it's not isolated from the rest of the life and the rest of human endeavor. Like art, what are the changes happening in art, in music, in the dance forms, in literature, in the ideology and philosophy of life, in economics, what's happening in the economics, the concept of the freedom, the new perspectives developing about, say, morality, the priorities of life. See, everything decides. Everything decides the direction of the theatre. Sometimes it's the limitations that provokes the theatre to make a big leap. For example, I remember that when the plague hit Europe, especially London, theatre was closed. COVID is not the first time when theatre is closed. So, including the Globe Theatre, it was closed for some time, for a few months, at least 4 or 5 months, because of the plague. And Shakespeare went back, sat inside the Globe, and wrote great plays like King Lear then. So he changed his playwriting style. Before, Shakespeare will just write for the rehearsals. He will write the lines for today's rehearsals for the actor. This is a specific actor, so he is good in that. I have this character for him, that character for him. His dialogue delivery is that. So he wrote for the actor, for the performance on the day of the rehearsals, or just 1 or 2 days before. But with Lear, he sat, forgot everything. He just went into writing the play. And then it was later produced when the Globe opened. So when the system changes, see, Shakespeare, I was just taking about Shakespeare. Why Shakespeare is so big in India? Shakespeare is, of course, the greatest playwright I adore. I love him. It's great to work with a text of Shakespeare to find new meanings, extract new meanings, extract the meaning of life, extract the political meaning of our present day life in Tempest or Macbeth, in whatever play. But just think about why Shakespeare becomes so important now, means in India. He is much more important in India than in England, because when colonization happened, when the new system of education happened under the British, they wanted to put a cultural icon, a literary icon on us and say, he is the biggest person, see him, study him. So it was a kind of imposing the supremacy of the British intellect on the colony, making the position of Kalidasa downwards and Shakespeare going up. And of course, since it was Shakespeare, it was very easy to do because he was such a great visionary playwright. So, if there was no colonization in the British, we may not be speaking or reading Shakespeare as such. So, at the time of the British, it was a big thing to quote Shakespeare in parties, just to say some lines from Shakespeare and see, I know Shakespeare. So kind of ideology, political situation that will decide the theatre also. So it is at this juncture, I will looking back to the question of the future theatre, the extent to this thought process to the distant time. The honest answer is that I don't know what the future of future theatre will be, because I don't know what will be the next coming society look like. But one thing I am sure is that theatre will be sustaining. It will be there, and the basic instinct of theatre will be there, like to tell the story live to the person sitting in front of me, not just addressing the people as an image. An image cannot substitute my personal presence in the theatre as an actor, as a performer. See, just look back. Theatre was trying to explore or expand its faculties. It was the word, then the movement, so the sight, what you see on stage and what you hear, the two senses. Again, the viewing was detached. You are sitting inside the proscenium, away from the actor. No, you want to come intimate. You broke the line. You came down. You made the audience inclusive. That's extremely important theatre, from Arthur to Schechner to Brodowski to Gluck. So that intimacy of the thing. They wanted to talk to the audience. Theatre wanted to touch the audience. And then theatre wanted to expand its communication to the other senses, like the smell. You have some smell coming from the stage. Somebody is cooking food on stage. That aroma of the cooking, the audience is feeling it, and the taste comes in. The food is cooked and it is being distributed. So many theatres is doing that. I remember Peter Fruman, who said, no, theatre is as needed as food. Theatre is as needed as food, as bread. That's how or why he named his theatre Bread and Puppet Theatre. I've been lucky to talk to him and see his theatre and performance. See, he uses a lot of puppets in his performance. He makes his own puppets with his own hands, big puppets, small puppets, and of course actors, music, movement, everything together. And he cooks or he bakes the basic bread in the oven which he has made with his own hands, and he distributes to everybody a small piece of bread and a garlic sauce together with a garlic chutney. And the taste of that very basic garlic chutney and that bread will remain on your tongue with the visuals you are seeing, with the content, very radical content, very progressive content, very daring content, very rebellious theatre. That's what Peter Schumann is doing. So the bread, the taste, the smell, the touch, you feel the breath of the actor near you, you hear him more minutely. So theatre is trying to increase its communicative systems to the other senses also. It becomes a kind of total communication, and that is the direction theatre is going. So in that we can use images, we can use multimedia, we can use installations, we can redevise anything, but the basic thing of direct communication is there. Theatre cannot be completely digital. So that is there. And again, why I go to a theatre as an audience? Just think about that also. Why should I go to a theatre? It's to see a play. But what is in it? What is the basic drive? Or what are the motives? Is it to understand the story? Okay, I'm going to see a play and has a story. Oh, this is a story. To get it. If it is so, you could have taken the text and read it. Or is it to see an actor doing wonderful work, his performance? Or is it to find out the marvelous design the director and the technicians done and the new aesthetic experience? Or is it to find out what is new about it? Where are we going ahead? Or is it to get that political meaning out of it? Yes, we are going for all these things, but it is not just for that. You're going there because you want to be there with other audience. You want to see the other people coming there. You want to talk to them. It's a kind of herd instinct. It is a socializing activity. We go to the theatre not just to see the play. It is to be there, to see the other people who have come there, to communicate with them, to talk to them, to interact with them, maybe to have a kind of communication with the actors and audience and the whole atmosphere. So this is a kind of meaningful social activity. Performance is not just an isolated one. It is connected with this social activity. The audience is also showing up, not just the actors. They are also showing, I am here, I am seeing this play, I am with this. So it's a social statement. So this herd instinct, you cannot be an isolated person. You cannot remain in your room isolated and secluded away from the rest of the living population. You wanted to communicate even to the past population, the dead population, the dead people. But at least with the living persons, with the living people, you may know him, you may not know them. Still you wanted to have a rapport, a kind of showing up and seeing. Both are there. And you're seeing, you're showing. So this communal activity of participating in a theatre is a basic instinct from that day to this day to the future. So in future also this will continue, but the form, it depends on the climate. Climate means the working atmosphere, the social system, the political situation, the resources which you have, the existing social conditions. We have to be negotiating with that. We have to be working with that. We have to be fighting with that. So, accordingly, new ways of expression, new system of expression, that will evolve, it will happen, and that has happened in the past. It will happen in the future also. So, I am not worried about the disappearing of theatre. It will continue, but I cannot predict the direction, the form, the structure. I can only say that the basic instincts, the basic essences of theatre will be there, even if the external form changes. And then, coming to the first two questions, this can be briefer answers. Like, as I said, theatre is trying to expand its vocabulary, but why the audience number is getting limited? Again, my simple answer is that no, theatre is a form. Of course, from the 1930s to 60s, this was the popular art form. People went to theatre to see theatre, they took tickets, there was good box office, there was good number of people, because this was the popular form of entertainment for the people. Then came the film, a new form, which became a more comfortable, convenient, and suddenly people started a new industry with stars and new form, new language evolved. It is so TV coming into the home. So in the 80s, TV became the popular entertainment. But it didn't hold much. The exchange for spectacles, mega events, and if you look back, it's a little curious to say that, no. For the last 10-20 years, which are the popular venues where people gather? It's exhibitions, big grand exhibitions, sometimes of utensils and sometimes of machines, gadgets, and now the mall. You go to the mall just to be in the mall. So mall started entertaining you. I don't know how long a mall can entertain you. So the mall became. So the form of the popular entertainment shifts very fast, very quickly in the last 100 years. From theatre to film to TV to exhibitions to mega events to malls and popular joints. So we cannot just say that no, theatre has to hold its position which they did it in the 1930s to 50s. And basically looking back, how many people a performance can address to at a time? Can 1,000 people see a performance and enjoy the performance? Natishastra said it's the maximum 500 people. And theatre is a form which needs intimate communication. It needs a kind of proximity. It needs a kind of directness in the contact. So it's not a form for a very large audience at a time. It cannot reach the number of people as a film or TV can reach. And it's a very momentary thing. You have a show, you see it, and the show is over, it's over. You can just have some memories and some photographs and some documents of the play which you have done in 90s or 20s, or a play which even you have done last year. It's not remaining, but the film remains, the digital remains, maybe documents remain. So dreaming of a larger number of audience at the same time simultaneously watching a performance, I think is against the basic evolution of theatre itself. Then the economics of it. Yes, we have expenses, and again the expense of making a play increases on. You need more lights, more gadgets, more projections, means more money. And if you have got more artists, you have to pay them. So the expenses is going up. The number of persons that theatre can hold comes down. And when there is another popular space, people go there. So how can a theatre survive? And realistically looking back, theatre has not survived just on itself, except in a very few time in history, except for very few groups. 5 years before, I have been touring almost the whole of America, visiting theatres. I was doing a study on the management of theatre and its viability, how it negotiates, now how different kinds of theatres negotiate with the changes in the time, the changing in the attitude, the technology, how it manages itself. That is the area of my study. I looked from Broadway theatre to off-Broadway theatre in New York to Los Angeles to Minneapolis, to Oregon to San Francisco, everywhere, different kinds of theatre. Radical theatre, underground theatre, experimental theatre, small theatre, big theatre, musicals. And I talked to some 120 artistic directors of different companies. And the one thing I understood is that there in US, where theatre is very costly and theatre is highly in demand, to see some place you have to book your tickets 1 month or 2 months in advance. It is completely booked. Means it's household shows going for months. Still, the most profit-making theatre makes 60% of its expense out of the ticket. So the box office, the ticket will give you a maximum of 60% in the most financially successful theatre. And for a very young experimental theatre company, of course the expense also will be much low, but they get 10 to 15% of the expense. The rest of the money, that 40% for the big company and 85% for the lowest profit making company, has to come from other sources. It may be the government grant, it may be the private grant, it may be houses, farms, it may be certain foundations, it may be donors who donate for the theatre. So theatre has to, even in a very economically planned system, a business oriented system, they have to get the money out of that. That's the truth. And the question about the full-time theatre, the grant, the economics, I think is answered. Again, to sustain just out of theatre as a professional, as an actor, is again a big dream. I've been talking to, so we have a very kind of understanding that, in India we are having a difficulty, and in Europe and America actors are paid, yes, they are paid, right? So they can sustain and survive just because of theatre. No. If you are an actor of a Broadway, fine, yes. If you are an actor of Guthrie Theatre in Minneapolis, you may live with the money. And if you are an actor of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which will give you that contract for a decent money and quarters to live in, you can survive. But 90% of the other theatres, the actors in the other theatres, are struggling to make both ends meet. I've seen brilliant artists, lead artists in musicals, in fairly successful theatres, driving Uber in their gap time. So from the morning to 3 o'clock, they drive the Uber. By 3 they have to report in the theatre for the show at 6 p.m. to do the makeup and all those things. And once they finish the theatre, they may drive back, getting another traveler to their home. So it's like that. Theatre everywhere is struggling. Theatre doesn't give you that full amount of sustenance, but it gives you that intoxication, that ecstasy, which other forms, other modes of life cannot give you. So I feel that the theatre artist survives in this very painful pleasure of the ecstasy of theatre, where you get the intoxication, you get that kind of human rapport you get with the other actor, with the audience, the theatre, how you relate with the life, your history, how you live in your memories, all these things. So this is a kind of brief answer about my position of, or my understanding of theatre, trying to answer these 4 questions put to me. And I want to thank Babida and all other people who made me to reflect on those things and to share it to all of you hearing me. I would have loved to be seeing you directly, how this personal touch contact, answering your questions, coming back, hearing your opinion, all those things. But you have to live with the times, and it's the time. So thank you once again.